United States government further relaxes restrictions on Cuba. Plus, in Brazil, the former president Luis Inacio Lula da Silva could become a minister in the government. Thanks so much for joining us. For teleSur's English, I'm Coddy Weddle, and this is From the South. As I was saying there, in Cuba, the government there, the United States government, has announced it will loosen travel restrictions, ease limits on the use of U.S. dollars in trade transactions, and allow Cubans to open bank accounts in the U.S. Now, the announcement comes almost a week before President Barack Obama's historic visit to the island. Critics believe that these new steps show that the U.S. president can actually lift the Cuban blockade himself. Cubans greeted the new measures as a sign of hope that the blockade's end could come soon.
Everything that they do towards improving relations between the two countries, I think that yes, they can file away rough edges, and they can continue advancing towards a better relationship and the end of the blockade, which is what all Cubans hope for.
But the new measures seem to aim at the U.S. long-standing policy towards Cuba regime change. According to the White House spokesman Josh Ernst, the lifting of these restrictions seek to put pressure on the Cuban government.
The goal of these changes is pretty clear. We do believe that it will make it easier for Americans who wish to travel to Cuba to do so. And some of the other changes that were announced today will give Cubans easier and more regular access to the U.S. dollar and more access to U.S. financial institutions, which could have the effect of expanding economic opportunity in Cuba. That obviously is something that the Cuban people have long sought. It also could apply more pressure to the Cuban government to implement additional reforms to the Cuban economy.
Former Brazilian President Luis Inacio Lula da Silva is likely to accept a position in President Dilma Rousseff's cabinet, and he plans to travel to Brasilia today. The former president met with his lawyers, and according to the Lula Institute, he has yet to confirm if he will accept the position. Now, the offer comes as the judicial process against Lula has been linking him to the Petrobras corruption scandal. Lula and the Workers' Party, including President Dilma Rousseff, insist that the process has been politicized. And the move aimed at protecting the former president has caused the center-right Social Democratic Party of Brazil to reconsider its governing alliance with the Workers' Party. The party has announced a 30-day process in which it will analyze if the alliance will continue. Several PMDB lawmakers are leading efforts within the party to break up the alliance. Chilean celebrities, including artists, intellectuals, and musicians, are rallying to support a reform of the country's abortion law being debated in Congress. Now, the reform seeks to depenalize abortion when it threatens the mother's life, when the fetus will be born dead, or if the pregnancy is the product of rape. Mexican authorities announced the detention of Alberto Martinez Gutierrez, one of the leaders of the Gulf drug cartel. The drug trafficker was caught by federal police in the city of Reynosa, northeast of the country. The notorious cartel controls large parts of Mexico's Tamaulipas state and is currently disputing the region with the Zeta cartel. The Colombian government announced it will not penalize drug addicts who are carrying drugs for personal use. The announcement comes after the Supreme Court let off a soldier convicted for carrying an amount of marijuana larger than the established personal use dose. Now, Colombia is trying to transform its drug policy to a less repressive emphasis. Thousands of taxi drivers took to the streets of Bogota to protest the rise of the web-based app Uber. At least 16 taxi drivers were detained during the protests and 189 vehicles were fined. The taxi drivers of the city say Uber is working illegally since their business model does not provide Social Security to their workers, which allows them to lower the tariffs. We now go to St. Lucia for a report from our correspondent there.
Reform activists in Bermuda are staging day 2 of protest action today after a massive protest on Friday that brought a number of services, including public transportation, to a grinding halt on Friday. The country's Home Affairs Minister, Michael Fahey, unveiled new immigration proposals on Friday, which will give those resident in the country for 15 years the right to apply for permanent citizenship, and those who have lived there for 20 years the right to apply for Bermudan citizenship. Now, citizenship would give the foreigners the right to vote in general elections, whereas before only foreigners without status who were registered to vote before 1976 have been able to vote. The Home Affairs Minister described the policy as the right thing to do, but the move prompted mass protest and a withdrawal of labor, which started on Friday and continues today. The protest is being led by the opposition Progressive Labour Party, the PLP. The minister maintains that Bermuda's old immigration policy allowed substantial numbers of people to live in Bermuda with no real hope or expectation that they can ever achieve the full rights associated with being a Bermudan, a situation he described as unacceptable. Now, on Sunday evening, Bermuda's Transport Ministry notified the public that there would be no public transportation, no buses, and the ferry services would be terminated on Monday due to the industrial action. The Ministry of Tourism warned that the protest could affect the tourism-dependent British Overseas Territory, which is home to 65,000 people. The protesters surrounded the country's House of Assembly today, joining hands and chanting down the policy, which is called Pathways to Status Initiative. A scheduled House of Assembly session did not take place today. A sign at the ferry terminal also confirmed that service has been suspended. Government also stated that there would be no garbage collection in the country. However, schools remain open. I'm Alison Kentish in the Caribbean. Stay with teleSur's for updates on this developing story out of Bermuda.
Alison Kentish there reporting on changes in Bermuda. A Chinese trawler now was sunk by Argentina while it was allegedly fishing in Argentine territorial waters. The Argentine Coast Guard says it fired warning shots and pursued the vessel, which tried to force a collision with the Coast Guard. Authorities confirmed they were able to rescue 4 of the crew members, and the others were rescued by a Chinese ship around the area. Another crucial day in the U.S. primary elections as voting in 5 states will take place. For the latest on this crucial Tuesday elections and how Latinos could play a key role in states like Florida and Illinois, we turn to our correspondent, Bianca Perez.
How decisive will the Latino vote be this Tuesday and in the November general elections? It's an important question. Latinos make up just under 20% of eligible voters in the United States, and roughly half of these, 27 million voters, are expected to vote in November. It is expected that there will be an increased number of Latino voters in comparison to the 2012 election.
Projections right now show that 2 million more Latino voters will go out and vote in November, and obviously we have to continue our efforts to not only increase our numbers, but to reach even further.
The primary election process thus far has shown an increase in Latino voter participation. The community is also more engaged in following debates from both parties and the proposals that candidates are making on issues that directly affect Latinos.
And what we saw in terms of the results is that you're reflecting what Latino decision polls have seen across the nation in terms of what's important. So what community influences the immigration reform, education, and the economy as the most important issues to the Latino community?
There is a portion of the Latino community that is disappointed by some of the comments that they have heard from certain candidates, such as the elimination of immigration executive actions which benefit thousands of higher education students. According to research done by the organization Latino Decisions, more than 85% of Latino voters think that the Republican candidates have a negative view on Latinos. This same research shows that more than 80% believe that Democrats are favorable to Latinos.
Many of the candidates, for example, have said that they will get rid of DACA. Marco Rubio and Donald Trump said they would cancel it on their first day, and that will impact hundreds of thousands of youth. So what they say does impact the Latino vote. The community is going out to vote and are learning the facts in order to protect their families.
We're seeing an atmosphere of violence against not only the immigrant community, but all Latinos, because of the toxic rhetoric that we are hearing. Therefore, the vote in November will be a way to defend our community, and we must exercise that right.
5 states and 1 territory are holding their primary elections this Tuesday. Nearly 700 delegates are up for grabs for the Democrats and half that for Republicans. Latino voters could play a decisive role in the outcome. Bianca Perez, teleSur, Washington, D.C.
And voting continues in the state of Ohio, where the Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton could be threatened by Bernie Sanders' rising popularity. According to the latest polls there, the race is tight in the states of Ohio, Illinois, and Missouri, where the Vermont senator has closed the gap within the last few weeks. Earlier today, in a response to the violence that has sprung up at Donald Trump rallies, President Barack Obama condemned the vicious political atmosphere.
We've accepted this as somehow the new normal. And it's worth asking ourselves what each of us may have done to contribute to this kind of vicious atmosphere in our politics.
The anonymous group has declared total war on Donald Trump and called on hackers to shut down the tycoon's website. According to a video from the group, Trump is being targeted for his hateful campaign.
He is the one who organized the complete shutdown of anonymous operations.
Russian military jets have begun to leave Syria after Russian President Vladimir Putin's announcement on Monday that they would pull out. So far, 34 fighter bombers and other warplanes have left the air base at Latakia in the partial withdrawal. Some of the pilots who were first to arrive in Russia were greeted with servicemen. 300 servicemen, journalists, and women were waiting at an air base in southern Russia. Cyprus says it will not support the European Union migration deal with Turkey without concession from Ankara on the partly occupied island. Cyprus President Nikos Anastasiadis met with the President of the EU to discuss the matter.
The Turkish proposal worked out together with Germany and the Netherlands still needs to be rebalanced so as to be accepted by all 28 member states and the EU institutions. The objective is to conclude the negotiations Thursday and Friday this week, but we are not there yet.
Earlier today, 4 police officers were injured during a counterterrorism operation in Brussels related to November's Paris attack. 1 suspect was shot dead, but 2 others are said to be still at large. 11 people have been arrested and charged in their connection with the killings, and another 8 are still in detention. The candidate of Myanmar's ruling National League for Democracy has won the presidential elections. The parliament elected Hitin Kwal, who is a close ally of Aung San Suu Kyi. Kwal said his appointment was, quote, Aung San Suu Kyi's victory. Suu Kyi is barred from the post by the Constitution, but has said she will lead the country anyway. It is the 10th anniversary of the kidnapping of Ahmad Sadat and his comrades in Palestine. With an explanation now, here's Noor Harazin.
The Palestinian Prisoners Club said in a statement that the 14th of March is a reminder for Palestinian officials to keep pushing for the release of Secretary General of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, PLFP, Ahmad Sadat, and all the Palestinian political prisoners in the Israeli jails. On that same day, 10 years ago, heavily armed Israeli forces, accompanied by large numbers of tanks, stormed the Palestinian Authority's Jericho prison in the occupied West Bank and abducted the PLFP's senior leader and 8 of his commanders, who had carried out the assassination of Israel's tourism minister, Rehavam Zaivi, in October 2001. The PLFP had targeted Zaevi in revenge for the assassination in August that year of former Secretary General Abu Ali Mustafa by the Israeli occupation forces with 2 rockets that struck his office.
Israel thought it had arrested all the Palestinian National Movement by detaining Sadat and other Palestinian leaders. However, Sadat proved that the Palestinian National Movement is not limited to one person and that its struggle against the Zionist enemy will continue as a top priority. The sufferings of the Palestinian people will not end unless the Israeli occupation is expelled from all the Palestinian land.
Back in 2001, the PLFP accused the Palestinian Authority and its security forces of playing a counter role in making the kidnapping possible in full complicity with the US and British administrations. Saadat rejected the legitimacy of an Israeli military court which sustained him to 30 years in prison. Major General Fuad Shobak, 75, who was one of the people arrested with Saadat, is currently in a bad health condition. He was sustained to 20 years, while the rest of the commanders are spending different long-term sentences in the Israeli prisons. Nur Harazin, teleSur's TV, Gaza.
Pope Francis has announced that Roman Catholic nun Mother Teresa will be made a saint at a ceremony on September 4th. The Pope cleared the way for sainthood last year when he recognized a second miracle attributed to the nun. The first miracle was attributed to her by Pope John Paul II in 2003. Dallas Savvy won his 3rd consecutive Iditarod dog sled race early this morning in Alaska. It's Savvy crossing 4th overall title in the last 5 years. He completed the nearly 1,000-mile race in a record time of just over 8 days. Savvy's record time beat his previous record set in 2014 by just over 2 hours. In second place was his father, Mitch Savvy. On Monday, the cast of the hip-hop musical Hamilton paid President Barack Obama a visit at the White House to perform 2 of the show's numbers. The hit musical tells the life story of the United States' first Treasury Secretary, Alexander Hamilton, with most of the major roles played by a person of color. Tickets for Hamilton on Broadway are sold out for months, and the cheapest seat is $1,200.
The $10 founding father without a father got a lot farther by work.
And that's what we're following on this Tuesday evening here from Caracas. Be sure to follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For teleSur English, I'm Coddy Weddle. We'll see you back here tomorrow.